Welcome to the Hello Seattle podcast, a local perspective on living in and moving to Seattle.
Yeah, we're excited to introduce you to people, places, and communities that make living in our hometown special. Hello, Seattle. I am your host and mortgage guy, Dan Keller.
And I'm your host, Zach McDonald, and real estate agent. And we got a special guest for you all today. We got the Mayor of Mukilteo, Joe Marine.
Oh, thank you, gentlemen, for having me.
Yeah, we're super pumped to have you on the show, and we're going to ask you all sorts of questions about Mukilteo and being mayor of Mukilteo, which is exciting, but we're also going to talk a little bit about real estate and mortgage here to kick it off. So Dan, why don't you kick us off with your mortgage update in 1 minute?
Yeah, we do this every single week in under 60 seconds. The mortgage market this week has been great because the Fed spoke. And they were boring and bland and said, we're not doing anything, but they did. Remember, it's not always what they say in regards to movement. It's what they say in regards to their talks and projecting. And they mentioned that there was a very small chance of the Fed lowering the Fed rate in March. And this is congruent with everything I've been talking about. I think it's going to happen in May. But with that, the bond market improved. So we've seen an improvement over the last 2 days, 2 consecutive days. So we're looking 30-year fixed rates are right in that 6.625 to 6.75, which that's down from last week.
Yeah, and I just filmed my market update video for the week a couple days ago, and we were looking at almost 6.9%. So that's quite a big improvement over the past couple days.
Moving in the right direction, Z.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about Mukilteo today, so I figured I'd give a little highlight to Mukilteo, and it's also my hometown growing up.
You think you would have wore a Mukilteo shirt? That's
fine. I know. Well, the podcast is Hello Seattle, so you got to rep Seattle here. Last month, the median sales price for single-family houses, and this is as of today, beginning of the month, $1,074,500. Condos, $565,000.
Wow.
If you look at a rolling average, $916,250, and condos $585,000. So you're looking at mid to upper fives for a condo, and right around $1 million for a single-family house in Mukilteo. And it's definitely not a starter home community. Most expensive place in Mukilteo last month, $1,800,000. It's a view house, a little over 3,000 square feet.
Okay.
And the least expensive was a condo townhouse in Smuggler's Cove area, $494,890.
I'll take it.
Yeah. So quite a big range of prices, right? But the condos are going to be in that, five to 700 range. Single family houses are pushing $1 million. So
pretty congruent with a lot of our recent episodes, our past podcasts, where we went throughout the suburbs of Seattle and how much does it cost to live in these and how much money do you need to make in order to live in these suburbs. And we're seeing that $1 million price point showing up a lot.
Yeah. So Joe, I'm excited to ask you some questions about Mukilteo. I have my own personal experiences with Mukilteo, but it's fun to hear everybody else's. So I'm curious, how long have you lived in Mukilteo?
I've lived in Mukilteo about 28 years now.
Okay.
Yeah, we moved from Eastmont area of Everett, having our first home there, and then moved to Mukilteo.
And why did you guys choose to move to Mukilteo?
Well, I have 2 daughters, and they were pretty young at the time, and we were really kind of looking at where do we want them. We knew this was going to be the house, the home in the area that they were going to be growing up in and going to school and finish their schooling there. And so my wife had an aunt who lived in Mukilteo, so we would go there and visit, and we were somewhat familiar with it, and just happened to be driving by one day and looked at a for sale sign and went up the street. We had not gone up before.
Okay.
And within 3 weeks, we were living in the house, and we're still there.
Wow.
When it moved, it went fast. So
that's awesome. What did you pay for your house when you moved to Mukilteo?
We're on a half acre, and
Great.
we paid at the time in 1996. It was ready for this?
Yeah.
$197,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But I was making a lot less.
Yeah.
The world's
somewhat
changed.
Relative, correct.
It's relative. So what's Zillow or Redfin say your house is worth right now? I'm sure you pay a little attention to that.
I'm probably in the $950,000.
Okay, so you're kind of in the median price. Okay. If you were to look back in your time living in Mukilteo, what would you say has changed? How has Mukilteo evolved over the years?
Well, certainly in 2006 when I became mayor, it just really took off.
Okay. Of course it did.
Yes,
of course it did.
No. Yeah.
We've seen actually quite a few changes to the community. We haven't grown a lot. Our last annexation was in the early 90s when we annexed Harbor Point, and we haven't grown much since then. We are looking at, literally within the next few months, we're going to be annexing the east side of the Speedway.
Okay.
Most people think it's already part of Mukilteo.
Okay.
But if you look where Azteca, the Mukilteo Speedway Cafe, that's actually an unincorporated county.
Okay.
We
Okay.
tend to service it, our police, our fire,
Yep.
but all the taxes go to the county, so we're working with them, and within the next few months that should also be part of Mukilteo.
Cool.
But a lot of the things, waterfront, we've seen the ferry terminal
Oh, yeah.
move within the last few years. We are going to be doing a full redevelopment down on that waterfront that used to be the tank farm property that, we ended up getting that transferred over while I was mayor the first time. And so really looking forward to doing that. If you're familiar with Lighthouse Park, our vision on that is to build a parking structure behind Diamond Knot, kind of alongside the bridge there,
Yep.
Yeah.
and then free up the rest of that park for green space instead of asphalt parking, which is what it is.
That's going to be so cool.
That would be excellent. And we know that is not just a Mukilteo park, right? City of Mukilteo owns the property, and we manage it, but it's really a regional. People come from all over to have that access.
Yeah, Zach, why don't we, and we do this with all of our guests when we feature a city, why don't we take a moment real quick, if you're listening and I'm unsure of where Mukilteo is from a geographical standpoint, Zach, I always lean on you because you're the real estate broker. I love Mukilteo, by the way, because I'm always out on the Puget Sound fishing, so I get to see Mukilteo from the water up, and it's absolutely beautiful. Plus, it's been one of my favorite cities to watch grow and develop since I got into mortgage back in 2008. Done a lot of mortgages there from, some of these condos on the golf course, right, to some of these nicer homes that are pushing $1 million to $1.5 million. So, Zach, where is Mukilteo real quick in a nutshell?
Yeah, well, I guess the easiest way to put it is you're right along the Puget Sound. You're north of Edmonds and south of Everett, right? So you're kind of smack dab in between. You have great access to 405 and I-5. I always love that about living in Mukilteo. We were talking about that off air a little bit, but I want to get the mayor back in here to tell us what's unique about Mukilteo. And if you were to describe it to somebody, how would you describe Mukilteo to somebody that's maybe new to the Seattle area?
Yeah, and that's a great question. We are very unique in that we are 1 mile wide and 6 miles long. Right along Puget Sound, so a lot of opportunity for view properties there, which is
a lot of views.
Why the price. And we're wedged in between Puget Sound on the one side, as you said, to the south Edmonds and to the north Everett, and then to the east side is Paine Field. So there's literally, we have 525 of the Mukilteo Speedway, which is mainly, it's our main street, but it's also the state highway that takes you to the ferry, and you don't get anywhere in town without doing that. You've got to get on the speedway at some point.
Yeah.
And so it's very unique in that it keeps us kind of small, right? Most of the people that you go to the hotels or not the restaurants and all of that are us, right? The people who live there. Maybe people who happen to be on their way to Whidbey Island, but you don't just happen to be, I drove along and found Mukilteo.
Stumbled upon Mukilteo.
Stumbled upon
Yeah.
it. And so most people are there for a reason. And so we're kind of that small, but at the same time, as you mentioned, we're close to everything. I mean, you're right there at 405, right there. I love telling people, you're heading south, you want to find Mukilteo, get on 405 and don't get off. You will end up, you have no choice, you'll end up in Mukilteo.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
and it's just beautiful. We've done a lot of work over the years with a brand new, beautiful community center. Well, over 10 years now, but it was
brand new when you were mayor the first time, right?
Yes, I got it built the first time, and one of the best wedding venues there because of those views of the waterfront. It just really, really nice. So a lot of things to do. We've got 100 acres in Japanese Gulch if people like to come in and hike and bike through that. We're fortunate we've got 9 gulches throughout our community, so we'll always have that green space that is protected.
It's amazing.
So there's just a lot of it going on, and our residents love to live there. The schools are good, which brings a lot of people in. About 18% of our population is Asian. The majority of that is Korean. We've got a high Korean population in there, so we're actively right now looking for a sister city with South Korea. We think
Interesting.
that makes some sense. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Zach, are we going to come back to the waterfront? If not, we got to jump down.
Okay, let's come back to the waterfront.
Okay, we'll come back to the waterfront.
No, you want to talk about the waterfront?
Want to go there now? Yeah, I mean, I think the waterfront is, and Joey, correct me if I'm wrong, with the lighthouse down there and Ivers, come on. I mean, it's kind of a staple in the Seattle area,
It's
right?
true.
Yeah. Yeah, Ivers on the waterfront, they're going nowhere. We've also got the Diamond Knot down there.
Yep.
We had Arnie's that sold. It is now
I just heard
Hook and
that.
Cleaver.
Yeah.
It's Hook and Cleaver. It's a great restaurant.
Okay.
The owners of Lombardi's.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yep. They put that in, and they're doing well.
Okay.
We just had a ribbon cutting a little bit ago, about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Earth and Ocean, this new little shop in there that literally sells seafood. It's like a butcher shop.
Oh, cool.
Interesting,
Fresh
kind of like
seafood.
a D&D Meats or something
I
like
was
that,
just
but in
there.
Mukilteo.
Yeah, exactly. I just
Okay.
in there last night and picked up some food, but they're
Okay.
doing great. They're really happy with the last couple of weeks. But that's that waterfront really that is that draw,
Yeah.
right? Who doesn't want to go down and at Ivers or
Yeah.
spend the night at Silver Cloud and enjoy
Yep.
that beautiful waterfront? And literally the ferry crossing every half hour, it just adds to that beauty.
The beach down there for family, and then what you guys have done with the park by the boat launch and everything.
So
There's
much nicer than it was when I remember it as a kid.
Barbecue with your, you have pits in there for fires.
I know it sounds like, but also when I was mayor.
I love.
I got the.
I'm sensing a trend.
Yeah. Well, for me, the only reason I ever wanted to be in local politics and be mayor in my community is because I wanted to get some things done. I don't want to sit for 4 years, 8 years, and people, what did you do as mayor? Well, I have this plaque. We don't care, right? The title is nothing. But you've got to say, well, this is what we did. What did you do with your time? We were able to do this, right? We got when I first got there, we were renting a warehouse space for City Hall. And at a point I said, listen, it doesn't make any sense. We're not sending a good message if the city isn't sure if they want to own.
Wow.
Why are we renting, right?
That's really interesting.
And
I didn't realize that.
So we built, I convinced the council to move forward. We built a new city hall, which we're in, which is great. It's not only for the staff having a place to work instead of outside of a warehouse, but for the citizens to know that, hey, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
We actually have a city hall now.
Yeah.
We're not renting a warehouse space. The old community center was an old concrete school, the old Rose Hill School.
I used to play basketball there in the mornings with my dad.
It was a little dark and creepy.
It was.
A concrete box. It was built in 6 months after the original building had burnt down. They literally, imagine that happening today, having a new school built in 6 months. You'd still be working on the permits, but they put that thing up, and it served its purpose for many years, and then it was donated from the school district over to the city, and it was used as a community center, and it really wasn't built for one, right? It was built as a school. So when we built the new community center, it's gorgeous. It fits nicely on the hill. It's not a concrete box, and people just love that facility.
It's a really nice facility.
Happy that we were able to do that. Worked hard to get the transfer of the tank farm property over so we could move the ferry terminal, and now we can actually access that property and start to put some development in there and free up some more space for our park. And so just so many good things and opportunities to continue to do, which is why I came back and ran again to make sure that we could move forward some of these things like the annexation I talked about.
So if we were hanging out in Mukilteo, where would we every once in a while see you hanging out, in your spare time?
Yeah. I spend a lot of time, obviously, in Mukilteo. My go-to is Sabora, Mexico, a little Mexican restaurant about 2 blocks from my house. I'm there probably at least 3 times a week.
Okay.
So we go there quite a bit. But we've got the Red Cork. It's a great little cafe bistro type thing. And interesting enough, it's in the QFC parking lot.
Yep.
But you wouldn't. It is the best food.
Yeah.
It just to go to. Like I mentioned, Ivers, we talked about already. Diamond Knot down on the waterfront. We've got the new Hook and Cleaver.
Yeah.
There's just some great places in Mukilteo to come and enjoy. So that we spend most of our time there. I rarely go out of the city to go eat.
Yeah. Are there any perks to being mayor when you go to these places?
You would think, right? But no, not so much.
You don't just smile at them and they.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing. Yeah. People.
Not
it's
yet, but
funny.
now that you've called them out on the podcast, maybe.
People think there's mayor. It's like, there's no, and nor should there be any special treatment. If anything, I have to be even more, because obviously more people know me than I know them. So you never know. I'm always representing the city, no matter where I'm at. So
you mean they don't have a Joe Marine margarita at your favorite Mexican restaurant?
No, however, at my favorite Mexican restaurant, they have this burrito that they call the El Presidente burrito.
Okay.
Because been there a while, and I'm looking. Okay, well, wait a second. So you got this vegetarian burrito, but if you just add meat, now you've got something, right?
Yep.
Because they got carrots and broccoli and onions, and why do they get all? So
Wow.
you put meat in it, and now
So you gave them the suggestion, and then they called it the El Presidente.
There it is.
There you go.
I don't think they have a name for mayor, so it's just El Presidente.
Did they have? I was going to say, is that some kind of a prediction for the future for you? Oh, okay.
No. Nope.
You don't aspire to run for president someday?
I'm just happy being in my own local community, and it's for a lot of us who get involved, whether it's you're in Rotary or Kiwanis or helping out at another nonprofit and just making that difference in your community. There was nothing better than being able to be on the council, become mayor, and really make that positive difference and a lasting in your community. It's just why most of us do it.
Joe, I got a question, and I know I could probably look this up, but since I have you right here, Paine Field, is that Mukilteo or is that Everett? Because that airport is just a life. I love flying out of there when I can.
Neither.
It's really?
It's actually unincorporated county, and the county actually owns the airport. So they own and operate the airport.
Okay.
Interesting.
Fair enough. All right.
So you weren't involved in Paine Field becoming a commercial airfield?
No. In fact, the city of Mukilteo had kind of fought the
I remember that.
commercialization there for many years. And a lot of people thought, well, it was a NIMBY issue. It never really was for me. It wasn't. I don't think, and quite frankly, for a lot of us in Mukilteo, we don't have the impacts. All of the airport impacts are coming off of Airport Road, which is in Everett. And then you've got, for the most part, where the ends of the runway aren't in Mukilteo.
Okay.
Right? They're up towards Everett, and they're down towards Linwood.
Yeah.
So most of us are on the side of the runway. But what a lot of us, for me, it was about, if you look at Paine Field, it is one of the highest revenue generating airports in the world.
Wow.
Right? You're talking $60 billion a year in revenue.
Wow.
And if you compare that to SeaTac, who the latest was right around $20 billion a year, and people, well, how is that possible? It's because of the aerospace manufacturing in Paine Field, and in this case, Boeing and ATS and companies like that. And that's just the airport, not to mention all the spin-off, aerospace companies that feed into that, and all of the businesses around that support it, whether it's restaurants or other things. And so, for me, it was always, that's fine as long as it does not impede or impact that aerospace manufacturing that creates so many jobs and so much opportunity. We don't have to be everything to all people. Does another airport make sense to take up that commercial service? And that's where my take on it was.
So I know a lot of people listening are hearing the word airport. I do mortgages, and I know Zach sells homes in the Seattle area. So air traffic, overhead, noise overhead, living in Mukilteo, and probably hearing complaints if and when they do come through. How has that impacted the quality of living in Mukilteo, the airport?
Yeah. Again, not as much as you would think on the commercial side. We would hear more from the military when you get a military jet.
Got it. Oh, yeah.
Now those you hear, right?
Yeah.
20 miles around.
Oh, yeah.
So some of those have more of an impact, and we don't have a lot of that.
Okay.
And again, I don't hear. In fact, we heard more complaints the last time I was mayor when we had the historic flights.
Okay.
Right? And those are awesome. But I would get a complaint, somebody saying, because not only do they fly and they fly around, but they're old, very noisy, right? A P-52 or something like that. But I'd say, but hold on for a second. Like we're out having a barbecue and it's noisy. And it's like, where else in the world, though, can you look up and see a couple of historic planes flying overhead? That is cool. Most places you go to and you get to see them.
Yeah.
Can't touch them. You can look at them, but here you literally get to see them fly. And so I think sometimes we just, got to stop for a minute and go, how lucky are we for those sorts of things. So again, for me, it was, I don't want to have a lot of that area used up around there for the commercial service, and the more that takes up, the more you need parking space, right? You need an expanded building. You need, and as long as it doesn't take away from what we really value here, which is the jobs created by aerospace. And people say, yeah, I like flying out of Paine Field. Who doesn't?
I love it too.
I want to ride to SeaTac. If I'm being selfish, I'm like,
I think it's important to understand as you're listening how valuable Paine Field is. Being able to fly in and out of there. I'm talking, I've shown up literally 30 minutes before my flight's taken off, gone through TSA and gone on, parked and walked right through. And
it's a great experience.
Yeah. The other thing I can tell you firsthand too is I've flown out of there a lot. When you do take off, they accelerate up into the air rather quickly. And it's kind of weird because sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, is everything okay with the plane? And it's like they shut off the engines for a moment or tune them down as they're kind of turning to go out over the water. So I can agree with you that I don't think noise doesn't have as much as an impact as someone might think, but I feel like it's fair to discuss that if you're considering moving to Mukilteo. So,
and I think where people more the concern is what they don't want to see on the bookends in terms of planes leaving at 5 in the morning, coming in at 2 in the morning. That's what will, wake people up when you're talking about a community. But during the day, and again, we just don't want to see that expand to the point where it will affect the manufacturing side of it.
Yeah, right on.
Thanks. Okay, let's talk about Mukilteo itself again here, and let's get into politics a little bit since you are a politician. Let's sell us on Mukilteo, first of all. Give us the sales pitch.
Yeah. Well, I would say that if you are looking for a quiet community, low crime, and I've got to say we have got the best police department. I would put them up against any of them. In fact, we have a program when you call 911, you can literally, they text you and they want to know your opinion, right? And it's like, hey, how was your experience? And all that. And I literally was just reading today, they come in like once a month. And everyone, you'd think, okay, they pulled me over, when somebody's upset, right?
Nobody likes getting pulled over.
Most people don't like interaction with the police for the most part, right? It's usually not your best day. And they're all like, called in about this. They're super professional. They're very friendly. They're helpful. And so if that's the kind of community you want to live in where you can interact with the police, our crime is low. We don't have graffiti and homeless problems everywhere. Again, nice being kind of tucked in there out of the way. And I think to some degree, because you've got to go up and down the speedway to get anywhere. We talk about this sometimes. Almost everything's a dead end. You're going to come in and cause crime there. It's hard to get out, right?
That's true. You're kind of stuck.
We're going to get you coming out one end to the other. And I don't know if that leads into it. But also you've got a community where so many of the people walk their dogs, walk with their kids. So a lot of people are out, active in their community, and it's those eyes and ears playing a part. When I talk to homeowners associations, which I do regularly, I'm always saying, listen, if you don't have a block watch, start one. If you have one, is it active? Because we could hire 20 more police officers, but that's not typically, you don't typically catch somebody driving by a police truck. Oh, I see somebody doing something. Yeah. What it is, it's the call that somebody saw something, and the police are then right there, and they can deal with it. But we need those eyes and ears, and I think we have a very active community that way. A lot of things people can get involved in. Excuse me. We've got the Citizens Academy that people can join and learn more about their local police department and do interactive things with them, which is a lot of fun. You can get involved with the community garden. We've got the trail builders. There's so many different things active that you can actively get involved in the community, and I always encourage people to do that. I can't imagine. I guess I'm one of those people who can't imagine going to work, coming home, watch TV, get up, go to work, come home, watch. There's got to be
a little bit more to life.
More to life than that, right?
I would agree.
Enjoy the ride, get involved, meet some people.
That sounds like quite the rabbit, just like the hamster wheel, right? Man.
Well, that was one of the big ahas from having another colleague of yours, mayor of another community that we had on. He was just very proud of his police force, and then how safe and the job that they do. They keep the community.
Shout out to Briar.
Briar community, and so that's great to hear about Mukilteo.
What are some public works? I got to give a shout out to them too. Nothing drives me more crazy than a community putting in, and it may be a state highway or it might be like ours is. They're like, okay, we're going to do these planted medians. We're going to put in trees and these bushes, and then like 2 years later, it's overgrown. And it's like, okay, why didn't you just paint it green?
Yeah.
And, that's a little,
Do turf.
a little easier upkeep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's always, for me, it's important what our community looks like for the people who are living there, right, who are driving it day to day, but even visitors coming through. Does the community look like a place that people care?
Yeah.
Right? Is it upkept? Is it nice? And again, that might seem superficial, but it's about attitude, and it's about how people feel about their community, and they want to get involved in things. I work hard to get people involved in volunteer opportunities, because guess what? That person who is volunteered or did something, when they're on a walk with their dog or their child or their spouse and they're walking, guess who's going to bend over and pick up that piece of trash along the way?
Yeah.
Because they're invested in their community.
That's it.
That's awesome.
So the more you can get people connected, it is a good thing. Don't just live there, drive to Seattle, go to work, come home.
You're going to get me moving back to Mukilteo here, Joe.
Well,
Watch it.
I'm working on that. You need to come on, Zach. We gotta find you a nice place.
Wow. Well, what are some of the
It's
issues?
going to be about $900,000, but we'll find you a nice place.
I can afford that, thankfully.
Good.
What are some of the big issues that Mukilteo is facing right now, and what are you doing to resolve some of those?
Well, in terms of big issues, what are we dealing with? Well, I talked a little bit about annexation. We're working to bring some of that other portion into Mukilteo there. We're talking about the redevelopment of our waterfront. We don't have, I wouldn't say there's these issues that are keeping people awake at night, right? Are we having this high crime? Are we having this homeless issue down by the waterfront? And so I understand there's other cities, and what I love about being a mayor in Snohomish County is we all work together. You had mentioned the mayor of Briar coming in, but pretty much all of the mayors in the county are working together. We formed a group a couple of years ago on public safety, right? Business leaders and mayors for public safety. And it doesn't matter the party affiliation, doesn't matter any of that. All of the mayors are saying we have to do something about some of these issues. And is the legislature doing everything they can to give us the tools necessary to do our job? And it seemed like the opposite was happening, right? The non-pursuit bill and some of those, the Blake decision. And some of those things were hurting the cities and taking away our tools, and that's why some of the crime has gotten bad. So the mayors get together and they'll say, it may not be happening, that may not be happening in my city, but you know what? We know it's happening, and it won't stay there. It will spread, and so working together, again, as a region, is it happening in Mukilteo? The fact that it's happening in Everett means something to us.
Yeah, I love that, by the way. Yeah. That was something that Dale shared as well on the show, that the mayors were working together in Snohomish County, and that's really exciting to hear.
Yeah, most of them.
Yeah, yeah.
Remember him saying
we won't name any names.
And by the way, those things take care of themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what elections are for.
Yeah. Well, I love talking about vision and where people are going in their careers, or especially with your community. So let's talk about the vision of Mukilteo.
Well, I guess our vision is to continue to be a community that people want to live in, or proud to live in. If you were talking about some of the real estate and stuff, there isn't a whole lot of turnover. When you look, there's not a whole lot of housing stock, not that there is anywhere, but there's not a lot of turnover in Mukilteo. Yeah. We don't have a lot of buildable space left. We've got a little bit, but we're basically getting to the point where we're at build out. There is some concern, a lot of concern by me and others, mayors as well, is the legislation coming out of Olympia that is sort of trying to do our jobs for us, and some of that zoning and the zeal for whether it's affordable housing or middle income housing or all of these other things. It comes down to about density, and they're trying to force more people in a particular space. And I just don't think that sort of legislation can't come from Olympia, because what works for Seattle doesn't work for Darrington.
That's right.
Right? What works for Bothell may not work for Mukilteo.
Yeah.
And we are different. We're communities that are made up of our citizens, and we are myself, the council, we're elected by our local citizens to make those decisions for what they want to do. If I wanted to live in Seattle, I can do that, right? But they may have a different philosophy or a different way of living than they would in Mukilteo or in Langley. So we continue to want to have that local control and let the cities build out the way that our citizens want. And it's not keeping anybody out. But at the same time, I don't think it's right to have a neighborhood that's been established for 20 years and then a builder can come and buy 2 lots and put in a 12-plex in the middle of it. It doesn't make that doesn't make sense.
Or the community that you bought in or bought into 10 years ago or 5 years ago is not the community. It's changing. It's not the community that you bought into. So I love that you give that, that power. You're an advocate for giving that power back to your residents.
Well, and the thing, we're the ones who deal with the implications of these laws. And by the way, once it's built, it's too late. God, I guess we messed up. Maybe we'll change it. Well, yeah, but the damage is done. Right?
Yeah, you're not going to go back.
So that's the problem. Just an example, one of the bills, 1110, it says, well, on any available lot, you have to build you have to allow for 4 units to be built on a lot. Okay? Doesn't matter how small the lot is. And if you're within, I think it's a half mile of a transit stop, i.e. bus stop, it can be 6 units. And then beyond that, it doesn't have to. You don't have to require any parking on site. So imagine taking a single house, tearing that down, putting in 4 or 6 units. Now think how many people might be living there in all those units, and their parking now is on the street. I mean, I always encourage people, just think about your neighborhood, think about your street, and people get parking becomes a real issue. I can tell you as a local mayor, if you're building apartments and you don't allow enough parking, right? And those are some of the things the legislature, no, you can't force them to have more than 2 spots per unit or 1.5, parking spots per unit. And that sounds 1.5 because we want to allow more units, right? But where do those cars go? Well, they go into the neighborhood next door. So now you've got multiple cars all parking in a neighborhood and
walking across the street.
Walking across the street, and it just spins off some of these problems that we end up dealing with. And so again, let us decide which is best. I'll tell you the latest thing that a lot of us are dealing with are these Airbnbs. And you think, but
does Mukilteo have a lot of Airbnbs?
Well, not yet. But the problem, we're going to have to put together something because of the fact that if unregulated, they doesn't say you can't, so we'll just do that. Well, when you have a community with views like this, or Lake Stevens, for example, well, now think about a B&B. You've got somebody coming in, they're there for the weekend. Okay? People on either side of them live there. To them, it's another night, and I got to sleep to get up the next day. For the people there, like, I don't know, I'm here for the weekend.
It's a tough balance.
I'm partying, right? This is what we're doing. So they're staying up till 2, and they're partying. And the neighbor's like, oh my goodness, and then of course the next weekend or the next week, it's somebody else. And it just when you mix that in a neighborhood, that's not what it was designed for, right? So it becomes some real big problems, and the neighborhoods get very upset about that. So you're seeing more and more cities having to put together something on the books to help take care of that.
Well, let's land the plane, since we've been talking about planes, right? In Paine Field, let's land the plane talking about housing in Mukilteo. You've hinted at some need for the local government to have jurisdiction and to be able to put into place policies that work for Mukilteo specifically. What are some of your thoughts around housing in Mukilteo and how it could be better or improved?
Yeah, I think we've done a good job. We've got a really good mix we've got some multifamily, we've got some condos, some for rents, we got townhomes, we've got a single family, and we've got more expensive neighborhoods and more moderate neighborhoods. I think we've got a good mix. That has not been an issue. It's just that taking away our ability to control that, and I think it's not fair to have people where we have built, right, in this, which the community likes, we like, well, now you can't just allow somebody to come in there and change that, right? You bought into a neighborhood, you expected that, well, this is what I'm buying. It's already built up. It's not like I bought next to the wooded 10 acres and, oh my gosh, they cut them down and built something.
Surprise.
Yeah, surprise. This is an existing neighborhood, and to go in and change that and undermine that is what people are going to really get upset with.
I can see that.
Yeah, I've got some stats on Mukilteo real quick that I think that will kind of fit right in line with what you're saying, but about 68% of residents in Mukilteo are homeowners. All right. About 24% of them are renters. But the fascinating stat is only 8% of those renters can actually afford to buy. So the rental market is providing a source of affordable living. But yeah, that's a pretty good, almost 70% of your community owns a home. That's a lot of ownership
crazy.
interest. Yeah.
And I don't know if we have time. You're trying to land the plane.
I was trying to land the plane for you.
But I just got to say, one of the things that concerns me and what we're seeing built up in the zeal for affordable housing and to have that is we're seeing apartment complex after apartment complex after apartment complex coming up. And my concern is this next generation coming in, we just can't have them stuck being renters, right? Yeah. Because they're not controlling their housing costs like you do with a mortgage.
Yep.
And the fact, because it will increase over time. So the next answer to that is, are we going to ask the government to do a rent control? Yep. And then what happens to those properties when, right, you can't invest back into them? And that doesn't work either. So we've got to just be careful. I'd rather see building more condos. Let people do some ownership.
Yep.
We can't be stuck as renters.
Yeah. Amen.
You don't build any equity.
Condos and townhomes. And I love that because this is what Zach and I preach to our clients every single day. And typically once a month, we teach a home buyer education class. And it's really hard sometimes when you're hearing it from a mortgage professional and a real estate agent that you need to buy a home.
It sounds self-interested.
It sounds selfish. Yeah. It sounds like we're just trying to sell what we do. No, let me have a candid conversation that I have with family members and friends. If you want to create wealth, if you want to protect your wealth in the future, you need to buy real estate. It's only getting more expensive. You just heard it from the mayor of Mukilteo. You need to buy real estate. We need to make real estate affordable. Prices aren't going to go down. So what is the next solution? Maybe some down payment assistance with which Zach and I have access to, and then townhomes and condos.
Yeah.
So you just heard it from a non-mortgage and real estate guy.
Yeah.
A mayor.
Yeah.
It's that important.
And a dad and a grandparent. So
there you go.
You want your kids and grandkids to be buying houses too.
So do you guys think that, I think the next step's going to be like Japan and stuff where you're starting to see from 30 to 50-year mortgages.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's going to move in that direction. Maybe not in the next 5 years, but definitely you have to look at the cost of home ownership now with down payment and then monthly payment.
But doesn't that just make the prices keep going up?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're running into, so like you just mentioned Japan, you're running into Japan.
There's nowhere to build there,
I'm not a geographic expert, but I'm pretty sure it's an island, right? You're running out of room. We don't have much more room in Washington State or Western Washington.
Yeah, at least in the
So
Puget Sound area.
What do? Prices keep going up. In order to help solve for that affordability problem is, you can extend amortization. That's one solution. I'd like to see more condos, more townhomes, affordable living.
Seattle's been doing a really good job of that. Seattle's a big hodgepodge. But Seattle has done a good job of having a very diverse mix of different housing options for people. Yeah. So I know Mukilteo doesn't want to become a hodgepodge, though. It's not necessarily a compliment, but it is. Seattle has addressed the affordability by adding density, and I think that has helped some people be homeowners that wouldn't have been otherwise. So
one last stat on Mukilteo and housing, and then I'll nip this. But in the next 5 years, Mukilteo is expecting a 26% appreciation rate. Forecasted appreciation over the next 5 years is 26%. Do the math on that. $1 million home. That's
I'm thinking
$250,000. Yeah.
That's actually pretty easy math.
Yeah.
Pretty easy math. So you mentioned the median's right around $1 million.
Could do that.
Yeah. Yep.
It's hard, like you said, for that not to happen when there's nowhere to build. So if you want to live in Mukilteo, you got to choose one of the options that's already there. It's a little supply and demand issue there for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Joe. Really appreciate getting to know you a little bit and have you on the show. Guess we'll wrap up with our typical goodbye, Seattle.